Hi there, it's Jack from Maths Forge. So today's lesson is going to be on place value. We're given this example where we're asked to find the value of 8 in this number here, 5,812.752. Now, in order to understand this, let's write out this number, 5,812.752, in this place value table. So we're going to start with the smallest one, which is the thousandths, and in this place here, this 2 goes into it. So 2. And for the hundredths, we're going to have the 5. The thousandths, we're going to have the 7. In the units, we're going to have the 2. The tens, we're going to have the 1. The hundreds, we're going to have the 8. And the thousands, we're going to have the 5. Now, what you should understand about place value is that each of these digits are a multiple of the place that they're in. So thousands, this is going to be 5,000 as a number. This digit here, it's going to represent 5,000. And this digit here, the 8, is going to represent 800. And this digit here, which is a 1 in the tens column, so it's going to be 1 times 10, which is going to represent 10. And for the units, it's going to be times 1, so it's going to be 2 times 1, which is 2. And in the tenths, it's going to be a multiple of 0.1, so that's going to be 0.7. And this 5 here, it's going to be a multiple of 0.01, so it's going to be 0.05. And if you can see what I'm doing, I'm just breaking down this number here completely. And finally, in the thousandths column, we're going to have 0.002. Notice how the actual numbers take the same position as their position in the whole number here. So let's answer the question now. Find the value of 8. Well, we can see that 8 is in the hundreds column. So the value of this 8 in this number is 8 hundredths. So it's going to be 8 hundredths. And if we just check our answer, there it is. So again, if you were asked to find the value of any other digit, you just see the position of this digit in its place value. Okay, so for example 2, we're going to have 851 multiplied by 10. So I've just written out this calculation using the column method, and you can see that the answer is 8,510. So the answer looks nearly identical to the actual number in the question, 851. It just has a 0 added on at the end. So this quick way of working it out can actually apply to multiples of 10 as well. So if you times by 100, so 100 has 2 zeros, so you'd write the number in the calculation, 851 followed by 2 zeros. If it's times 1,000, then it's 3 zeros. Times 10,000, well, that has 4 zeros, so your answer is going to have 4 zeros as well. And this doesn't work for every multiplication question, but it does work for multiplication questions where you have a 1 followed by a bunch of zeros. So if we just check our answer, that is the case. Now, it also works in reverse as well. So here we have 2,748,000 divided by 100. So whereas when you multiply by a 1 and a bunch of zeros, you start placing zeros at the end of your number. If you divide by 1 and a bunch of zeros, you begin taking away zeros from the end of the number. And you have to be very careful here, because if your number has a decimal place in it, then this method doesn't work in the same way. So let's see. We're going to have 2,748,000. And since we're dividing by 100, we can cross out the 2 zeros at the end, leaving us with 27,480. Okay, on example 3, we're asked to calculate 147.67 times 100. So in this case, I've just drawn a place value table here, and we can see where all of the digits are in their place value. And it's kind of similar to the 2-star example, but we're going to work it out differently. And I'm going to show you what happens to the numbers when you multiply by 100. So all of these digits here are going to get 100 times larger. And that means that they're going to shift 2 spaces to the left into the new place value. And the reason it's 2 spaces to the left is because we have 2 zeros. If we had 3 zeros, so if we were timesing by 1,000, then they'd shift 3 spaces to the left. And the reason it's to the left is because this shows that the numbers are getting larger. They're going into a larger place value. So in this case, this one here, which is in the hundreds column, will now be in the 100,000s column. This 4 will shift over 2 spaces as well into the thousands column. The 7 will shift 2 spaces into the hundreds column. The 6, 2 spaces into the tens column. And the 7, 2 spaces into the units column. And this is the answer, 14,767. We'll just check our answer. And that's how it's done. So you don't have to draw out the place value table every time. You can just sort of visualize it. How many times do these numbers need to shift across? Well, if you're timesing by 100, there's 2 zeros, so they shift across to the left twice. Now for the second 3-star example, we're being asked to divide 622.25 by 1,000. So instead of the numbers moving to the left, because that indicates that they're getting larger, we're going to move the numbers to the right now. And since we're dividing by 1,000, so it's a 1 and 3 zeros, the 3 zeros show us that the numbers are going to move to the right 3 times. So this 5 is going to go from the hundredths column to 1, 2, 3, the 100,000ths column. So it's going to go here. And this 2 is going to follow it and position itself here. And this 2 is going to follow as well, followed by the other 2 and the 6. And remember, the decimal place does not change. It stays where it is. Now, we don't actually have a number in front of the decimal place anymore, so we put a 0, which is known as a placeholder. And if you take a look at this number here, 0.62225, this is our answer. So it's going to be 0.62225. And if we just check our answer, there it is. So just remember, when you're multiplying by a 1 and a bunch of zeros, the numbers move to the left. When you divide by a 1 and a bunch of zeros, the numbers move to the right by how many zeros you have. So if you have 2 zeros, the numbers move to the right by 2 spaces. If you have 3 zeros, the numbers move to the right by 3 spaces, and to the left if you're multiplying. And that's it for place value.